Hello everybody, this brief video is over the components in persuasion. So we've talked about attitude change, which is simply how your attitude changes. And there's all manner of processes that could lead you to change your attitude. You know, social comparison processes, cognitive dissonance reduction processes. But when a person is attempting to change your attitude, they are engaging in persuasion. So persuasion is a directed attempt to get a person to change their attitude. Now, when it comes to persuasion, three things tend to be or are considered. First, you have the source. So where is the message coming from? What is the message? What is the content? What is the nature of the message? You know, what is talked about? How long is it? Is it full of strong or weak arguments? And then you have the recipient. So what are some of the characteristics of the recipient? You know, are they, what's their personality? You know, how do they think, or, you know, etc. What are some motives that or goals that they might have? So each of these things, factors of each of these components affects persuasion. So for example, with the source, there are certain elements about the source of a piece of information that we use heuristically to that we use to decide whether or not we're going to change our attitude, whether or not we're going to be convinced by a persuasive message. So, for example, there's the attractiveness heuristic. We tend to be more persuaded by people who are attractive. So, again, there's this general heuristic that attractive people must be right. In general, there's this good stereotype, and people tend to assume all manner of positive qualities about beautiful people. But in addition to that, they tend to think they're more intelligent, and they tend to be more persuaded by attractive individuals. There's also the expert heuristic. People tend to be more persuaded by people who appear to be experts. All right. So the expertise and attractiveness, these are both qualities of the source that can change persuasion. Qualities of the message that can change persuasion. You can have these very shallow features of the message. So, for example, the length. In general, there's a general tendency for people to be more persuaded by messages that are longer. And in fact, you even see this sometimes among students taking multiple choice tests. You know, again, there's this general assumption, this general length heuristic, in which, just to review, a heuristic is a mental shortcut. So it's a limited piece of information that you make a judgment based on. You don't think through it completely. You just make a quick decision based on a limited piece of information. So the length heuristic, you're making a decision about the accuracy of the message based on the length of the message. So you're making a judgment based on the length, and not really anything about the message other than the length. So you're making a judgment based on one piece of information, a limited piece of information. But if you're thinking more carefully, then you might make your decision based on how good the argument is. Is it a high-quality argument? Does it have a lot of facts? Does it have a lot of evidence for it? Or is it more of an emotional appeal? Is it is it a weaker argument? So, you know, you have stronger arguments, have more evidence, they're well thought out, they're highly logical. Then you have weaker arguments that are, you know, largely emotional. The points aren't the clearest. They're not the most logical. Again, people tend, especially when they're thinking about the persuasive message, people tend to be more persuaded by strong arguments than by weak arguments. And then, of course, you have features of the recipient. You know, I mentioned personality. People who, a lot of times, the qualities of the recipient and the qualities of the message interact. So, for example, people who personality match the content of the message tend to be more persuaded by that message. So, for example, in one study, they had participants, and this is kind of an old study, and they were using advertisements for VHS players. I wonder how many of you remember what VHS players are. It's retro. I don't even have one anymore. Anyway, so one advertisement for a VHS player talked about how the VHS player could facilitate hanging out with friends. And in another version of the advertisement, it advertised how a VHS player could facilitate a night at home. Now, they then measured the recipient's extroversion. What they found is that people who are highly extroverted were more persuaded by the message emphasizing a VHS player's ability to facilitate a social social interactions, a night with friends, then were introverts. And introverts were more persuaded by the message advertising the VHS player as being able to facilitate a night at home. So an event that's less socially, that involves less social interaction. So again, here are our three qualities. We have the source, we have the message, and we have the recipient. And qualities about each of those elements can affect persuasion. They can make it more likely for you to be persuaded or less likely to be persuaded. And that is all for this video. So far, of the ones I've done tonight, this one's the quickest. Again, if you have any questions, send them my way, but that is it for this video over the components involved in persuasion.